Hello, welcome to a special program here at our humble abode, Helena Civic Television. With me today is Dr. Daniel Libby, who's in charge, he's the director of a Veterans Yoga Project, which is affiliated with the Feathered Pipe Foundation and Feathered Pipe Ranch. Welcome, Daniel. Thanks for coming here. We're looking forward to hearing a little bit about Feathered Pipe and then more detail about the Veterans Yoga Project, which you're deeply engaged with.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for having me. Those are two of my favorite topics to talk about, so I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Let's start with the Feathered Pipe and your affiliation with it. Many people in our community know about it, know a little bit about it, a few know a lot about it, but most people it'll be news about the Feathered Pipe.
Yeah, which is really interesting because the Feathered Pipe Foundation is world-renowned in certain circles. It is a phenomenal educational and retreat center out up on top of Colorado Gulch, just outside down Highway 12. And for the past 45 years or so, they've been on a mission to provide direction to those seeking it. It's a place where one of the original intentions was to create future leaders. And for 40 years, they've been doing educational workshops on yoga, natural healing, Native American flute workshops, and all sorts of workshops that are intended to help with consciousness, the development of consciousness, transformation, and growth.
Yeah. Well, I learned before we started this program that you're a licensed clinical psychologist. You have a lot of education in this arena, and then you led yourself, I guess, towards yoga. Explain a little bit about that connection between your own academic training and practice and this project that relies on yoga.
Sure. So I first went to the Feathered Pipe when I was, I think, 19. Well, actually, I went a couple of summers when I was 7 or 8 years old, but first came back to it when I was 19 and spent the next 9 summers living in a tent and working at the ranch, cooking, cleaning rooms, driving. Eventually, I became a massage therapist. And that's where I got my best education, because we had leaders from around the world who were experts in their field of mind-body healing who would come through and teach what they had to share with the world. And so that's where I think I got my first education on looking at the mind and the body and healing the mind and the body from ways that are a little bit different than standard allopathic medicine. And so during my work here, again, at some point I became a massage therapist and was working on people's physical bodies, working with physical pain, chronic pain, and found that they would have these emotional or reactions to the work that was happening in their body. So I wound up going back to school. I went to the University of Montana, graduated, go Grizz, and then went to graduate school back on the East Coast at St. John's University in Queens, New York, all the while studying the mind-body connection, what's happening physiologically, and how is what's happening in our body related to what's happening in our world, right? Or what's happening in our mind, but how I'm feeling emotionally and how I'm actually able to do what I want to do in the world, right? And to be this idea of self-mastery, the whole idea of one of the things that I took away from a lot of that learning at the Feathered Pipe were that there are systems to help us be better human beings, right? So that I can develop the self-mastery to be able to live in line with my values and goals in spite of my traumas, in spite of my addictions, in spite of my bad habits, in spite of all the other things that we deal with as human beings. And that there are tools that we can learn that can help anybody. And what I found and what I went to graduate school for was to understand, and my postgraduate education was to understand how to use these tools for people who have been put in the worst situations that human beings have been put in. In particular, I work with military veterans, but individuals who have endured very significant traumatic experiences, who have seen the worst of humanity and the atrocities that we have, they're part of our reality in this world. And how can we help those individuals who have been scarred by those experiences using these very simple tools? And so my sort of trek from spending my summers here in Helena, Montana, learning about how powerful it is just to quiet down in the space of nature, to learn from others, to be in community, and then to take that through a standard clinical psychology education, where I learned more about psychodynamic theories and cognitive behavioral theories, and then now in my post-graduate school world, coming and being able to take that to a population who I think are the most deserving, right? The men and women who are out there serving and protecting us, and the ones who are bearing the scars of that service. The more that we can use these tools to re-empower them, the better we'll all be, because these are our natural leaders in our community. So that's my very long-winded way of answering your question. I don't know if I took you from A to Z exactly there.
No, that was very helpful, and it's always surprising to me to hear yoga and yoga-like meditation, practices described as very simple tools. Because as somebody who doesn't practice it, my first thought is, oh, that must be really complicated. Transforming one's consciousness, that can't be simple. And yet, experts say otherwise. Well, let's just continue then with the more specific description of the Veterans Yoga Project and the actual event or series of events that will take place this September at the Feathered Pipe. It's geared toward women veterans. So tell us more about the Veterans Project and what the people of our community can expect to hear about it and learn about in the near future.
Sure, absolutely. So maybe I'll take you, spending those years at Feathered Pipe, went to graduate school. I started working at the VA in West Haven, Connecticut as part of a postdoctoral fellowship there. And I went there specifically to do research to look at whether these practices, and when we're talking about yoga, and this is maybe a little bit about what you're getting at, is that there's a lot of different ideas out there about what yoga is, right? Because there's actually a lot of different types of yoga out there, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. For me, for Veterans Yoga Project, these are about simple tools to help us with recovery and resilience. These are simple tools to help us live in line with our values and goals. And it's breathing, pretty simple.
I do that.
Meditation, which again, meditation can be demystified. Meditation is just about attentional awareness. Where do you put your attention? Right now, as I'm talking to you, you can listen to me, you're focusing on me, and your attention is on the words that I'm saying and maybe my body language. If you're dealing with maybe post-traumatic stress, your attention is being constantly taken back to the memories, constantly being pulled to checking for your safety perhaps, or the safety of others around you. So meditation is just about controlling your awareness. Mindful movement, which is the third tool, is just moving your body in awareness, right? We all know, especially as we're getting older, if you don't take care of your body, right? Your body's, it's deteriorating anyway, but the more we take care of our bodies, the healthier we're going to be, and the more we're going to sort of have those good years in our golden ages, in the golden years. And so being able to consciously change, like the change in consciousness that you talk about is that. It's about bringing consciousness to the way we even move our bodies every day, to how I move the body when I'm talking to you, to how I walk in the door when I walk home and meet my wife and daughter, to how I'm interacting with my staff. The more we can bring consciousness and mindfulness to that, right, even to the way we're holding ourselves or holding our bodies, the better choices we make. And in my view, the better world we live in. And for somebody who's dealing with post-traumatic stress, and coming back to your question about what are we doing here, is that for people who are dealing with post-traumatic stress, for veterans who are dealing with these very significant symptoms, these simple tools are more than just, oh, they help me relax, right? They're more than just, oh, I'm able to focus a little more clearly. I mean, these are life-saving for many of the veterans we work with. The statistics out there vary, but it's pretty well documented. There are over 2 million American veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, many more dealing with traumatic brain injury, depression. And the research and our experience bears out that these tools help significantly. And I can't tell you how many veterans tell me, yoga saved my life. And as a clinical psychologist, I always say, yoga is not a cure for PTSD, and you want to work with mental health providers, because you really do. But I can't tell you how many dozens and dozens of veterans I've said that yoga saved my life, right? Mindfulness, meditation saved my life. And so the Veterans Yoga Project grew out of the Feathered Pipe Foundation. They were our first fiscal sponsor before we were our own 501c3 nonprofit, because they, much as they incubated me as an individual, they incubated this organization. And now what we've been doing, this will be the 4th time, where we are opening the ranch up to a bunch of veterans. We've done some family retreats before. This year we're going to be focusing on women veterans, and we're going to invite them to come up to the ranch and participate in these 5 tools. I think I got through breathing, meditation, mindful movement, rest. Many of us don't feel well rested and don't get enough rest, and there are ways and guided meditations that we can use to deeply rest the mind and the body in order to sort of free up that consciousness. And then the last one is gratitude. Because remembering to be thankful for what we do have opens that door to being thankful when we do get the things we think we want, that we think we need to make us happy. And so we're going to invite some women veterans, mostly from Montana, to come up there for 4 days, and we're going to teach these tools and how to use these tools in our everyday life to deal with everyday ordinary challenges and then the more extraordinary challenges that many of these women have faced. And again, this will be the 4th time we've done it. The best stories, the anecdotes that have kept me working hard in this work, right? Running a nonprofit organization, not my forte. Massage therapist, psychologist, yoga teacher, not necessarily. But what keeps me running and doing it is these stories, especially from these stories that we've had at the Feathered Pipe, where we've had veterans who have literally said that this is what saved my life. I'm still here because of this. And so we're going to keep doing that as best we can. And so that's what we have going on this September, specifically for women veterans. We've had to postpone. We were going to do 2 this fall. Unfortunately, we didn't get the funding that we need, and we're still trying to raise the funding for the women's retreat. But hopefully we'll get even more so we can do another retreat, a men's retreat next spring, and maybe a family retreat as well. Because I have to say the results have been extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to report to our viewers that we've been invited to capture some of the highlights of this retreat coming up in September. So we'll be able to share a bit of this wonderful training with the public at large. We're looking forward to that. You mentioned funding, and I didn't think to ask earlier, what are your major sources of funding? And if we have philanthropists in our midst, how would they connect themselves to this program?
Sure. So we are a 501c3 registered nonprofit. As a nonprofit, it's been about 7 years now that we've been in existence, and just in the past year or 2, we have really become a little bit more sustainable, running a little bit more like a business. And so we have 3 main sources of income. We get no government grants, even though we run over 50 programs at VAs, vet centers around the country. We're offering free tools to veterans. Most of our income comes from individual and business donations. Right? We have a corporate sponsorship program. We do free yoga classes and educational events as fundraisers, but mostly it's from individuals and donors. That's about a third, a little more of a third of our income. Roughly a third of our income comes from earned income. So we teach. So we are offering continuing education to yoga teachers. We have a new compassion fatigue training, turning compassion fatigue into compassion satisfaction, which will be eligible for continuing education for other healthcare workers and providers. So about a third of our income comes from those educational programs that we offer. And we now have a grant writer that's helping us out 20 hours a week. And so we're trying to, probably a little less, maybe a quarter of our income comes from the grants. So we're trying to be sustainable and have multiple sources of income, but we do rely on the public in large.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, compassion fatigue. It's worth a fortune to figure out how to overcome that. I think we all have a sense of what that is. There's so much going on in the world, not so much our immediate surroundings, but people are suffering in our immediate surroundings, and we know the worldwide situation is horrendous for lots of people, refugees and elsewhere. So we're always being asked to be compassionate, and sometimes we wear out, and so that part of your mission sounds wonderful. We're out of time, I'm sorry to say, but you have the last word. If there's something you haven't said yet that you want people to know about this program, here you go.
Well, one, I would just say thank you, because the reason that we've done these retreats here in Helena for the past few years is because of the individual and business donations and the contributions of the community in Helena. And I'm not going to name names because I know I'll forget some, but there have been a lot of individuals and businesses in Helena and around the state of Montana that have made these retreats possible. And so I guess my final word would be gratitude to you for having us on and for helping us to bring awareness to this work.
Well, thank you, Dr. Libby. And those of you watching, you'll be hearing more about this event coming, or the series of activities at the Feathered Pipe Ranch in the fall. We're happy to be involved in helping people learn about what you're doing. So thanks for being here, and thank you.